Wellness Show, episode 201. Welcome to the Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. Welcome to the Wellness Show, and today I'm excited to have Jeanne Omlor with us today, and we're going to have an interesting topic to discuss. The topic is grit for success.
Yes. So thanks for having me on the show, Ty.
You're most welcome.
Great. So why don't we just get started?
Absolutely.
Okay, so grit. I talk a lot about grit. It's something that I feel is really, as I say, as far as the title, the biggest factor to success. And I've done this presentation for a lot of places, and it's been very well received. And people have actually gotten a lot of value using my little techniques on how to up your grit. Now, before we go into this, grit, people kind of don't really know what grit is. So I think I'll just start with talking about what is grit. I'm just going to refer to my notes a little because I want to get it right. So before we launch into how to up or increase your great grit, your wonderful grit, let's just talk about what is grit. So grit is basically bravery or strength of character, firmness of mind or spirit, unyielding courage in the face of hardship or danger, and the power of passion and perseverance. Now, that last one is more of a modern take on it. Now, I don't know if you know this, Tyhson, but I have a background as a top executive recruiter. And I didn't understand from my point of view that a lot of the really successful people, it wasn't just that they had a great education. It was also that they had this special thing called grit. And it wasn't just that they kept going. It was a very smart way of being gritty. And so that's what I want to make people aware of and try to help them with a system. So instead of throwing a bunch of fascinating pieces of data at you, I thought that I would really make it, a how-to. How does that sound, Tyhson?
Yeah, it sounds absolutely perfect. I mean, I love the idea of helping people with hot tips about what does this mean and how can you apply it to your life and why should I care and how do I use it, and all that is really beneficial because it helps people make the next best step.
Absolutely. Okay, so and I am going to show people some books right off the top. I don't sell these books myself, but now I actually interviewed Paul Stoltz. This is a fantastic book. It's great. This book's wonderful because it talks about a lot of people who are gritty and their story. Beautiful book. Interviewed, and if anybody's interested, at the end, we'll say where they can get this interview with me and Dr. Stoltz. And there's another book, which is this one, Angela Duckworth. Another great book. Wonderful. And I'll go into a little bit more about what she talks about as well. Obviously, what I'm talking about is not just saying what they're saying. It's my own impression and how to go further with it. And I will say it's wonderful to read these books, but what happens with people is we read really inspiring books about people that are gritty and it's wonderful and you get this warm, fuzzy feeling. You know that feeling, Tyhson?
Absolutely. And then you do absolutely nothing with the information.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I've done is you're good. I have read a lot about grit and I've practiced a lot of grit because I've had to and to live my life. And but the problem is we read these and then there's no way forward. So I've gotten a little bit of what they're doing and then a little bit of what I'm doing moving forward. Okay, so let's go on with the how-to. So the point is not being gritty. The point is to understand that there's good grit and there's bad grit. Now, bad grit is that you never give up and you don't analyze why things aren't working and doing the same thing over and over. And we all know, that thing about a crazy person does the same thing over and over and gets the same results. So we have people, well, like me, that used to do that, I was doing the same thing and there might be a little bit of improvement, but it wasn't really like, okay, it's great to work hard, but I think there's this morality thing, just work hard and great things will come to you. No, work smart and then hard and great things will come to you. What do you think about that, Tyhson? Would you say that resonates with you?
Oh, absolutely. I think the amount of hours that I've wasted, what I would call being busy, by thinking that doing was the same as achieving, created a lot of chaos in my life. And grit is a waste of spinning your wheels with your brakes on, right? You're going nowhere fast. And there's a lot of smoke. You think you're doing something, but you're really not getting anywhere. So I agree with you totally.
And that's great, because that brings me into something that I am also kind of an expert at, which is productivity. And there's this feeling of doing something when people are busy all the time, but you actually get more done if you take a breath, you analyze what needs to be done and what will actually create impact in your business, in your life. And sometimes doing less is more productive as far as reaping the rewards, let's just say. But as far as doing more all the time, we have this false sense of security that, well, I was busy all day. And so I think that also, that's another whole talk, but that also warrants some sort of analysis. That's my point of view.
I play a game with my push away from the desk, take your hands off the keyboard, put your hands in the air, step away from that desk. Because I need to be reminded that I'm addicted, right? That, I got to have some authority to give me permission to leave it alone, go for a walk, go do something else, but stop doing. It's just like, I say doing is like pooing everywhere. You're not getting nothing done. Right.
Well, I have a system where we do, but then we don't. So I'm not saying, just, okay, take a vacation in your work, even though you're not on vacation. That's one of my things. If you're going to take a vacation, actually take a vacation. And if you're not working properly, you got to do one or the, pick a lane, right, folks? You're either on vacation or you're not. So I'm not saying don't be productive. I'm saying to figure out what it is you actually do need to do and then work hard. And then I have a whole system. But let's go back to grit. But certainly being gritty with your productivity comes into that too. So it's all part and parcel. But let's get back to the matter at hand. Okay, so I've explained what grit is, just for people that didn't really know, because we hear about grit all the time, and I'm really big on explaining what is first. So we all know what that is. Okay, we've seen the books. Now we're gonna go further. Okay, so to get ahead and to really use this gritty kind of thing I'm talking about, you've got to do 4 things, okay? Oh, by the way, we don't have to kill ourselves to be gritty. That's not it. Not kill yourself because you're more virtuous. There's this sort of false virtue that goes around that the more we kill ourselves and the more we're in ill health. I do not talk about that because I think that being in good health is the #1 priority in my life. So you got to work things around. No virtue in burning yourself out. Okay, grit can be fluid and harmonious, and we can keep our health and our personal life. Okay, so now I personally have been not very good gritty. I've been moronic in my grit in the past because my personality was just push ahead. So this is a nuance now that I am understanding, and it's a need. When you have a need, you help other people. So I had a need to understand, okay, I've got to work hard, but I got to figure out where. This is where I'm going to help people today, because this is my, they say the best way to help people is have that problem yourself and find a solution. So this is what I've done. So no judgment here. Okay, so how do we do this? So to get a start, for some concrete action that you can build on, and actually if people want to email me, I'll actually give them sheets. So that's later, worksheets. Okay, so there's 4 things. Now the first one, you're going to love this, is stop complaining. Okay, very easy to say, but just stop complaining. Because what happens is you're subscribing to the hardship. And the more you complain, the more that becomes this big animal of, oh, poor me, I'm just so, everything's so bad. Okay, that's the first thing. When you start to complain, then it just becomes this animal. Would you agree with that, Tyhson?
Absolutely. I mean, The opposite of that is the attitude of gratitude. Complaining doesn't get you anything except a lower frequency, and you feel terrible. So that's not the way to go.
No. Okay, good. Now something I've realized just by watching is that when I'm in a gritty phase and doing something very challenging, the reaction of others is very influential. Now listen to this. For instance, if I say, this is really hard, people go, oh yes, how are you doing that? You poor thing. I start to subscribe to their feeling of you poor thing, and then I'm feeling sorry for myself, and it's a trap. Okay, so I've consciously said thank you for your empathy, because I really am grateful that they're not doing it to make me be a victim, because they're being empathetic. But it's what we do with that information. It's not about others, because they're just being kind people and loving. So it's not about them. It's like, oh, you deserve a medal. Well, no, I don't deserve a medal. Let's just think about people that are really gritty compared to me. Okay, I'm not in Auschwitz. I'm not Viktor Frankl. That whole, you've probably read Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp, and he saw that he could still somehow have some control and power over his life within his head. So I think that sort of victim kind of mentality can penetrate our consciousness. And you have to be careful to say something like, well, thank you so much, but it's not that bad. Thank you so much. It's really bad, but it could be worse. So what's your feeling on that, Tyhson? Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The victim mentality is, going around the circle. The victim becomes the accuser, and the accuser being the rescuer, and that whole cycle becomes addictive. And
Right.
We play it out in our homes. We play it out in our society. We play it out in our cultures. And the way to stop this is at the individual level, is to stop being a victim. Yeah, you may be having a difficult day, but guess what? You could choose something different right in the moment. So
Right.
taking control of that moment is a hot tip.
Exactly. And we all have trials. And I had what was deemed universally a very difficult situation that I got myself through, which went on, and it was very difficult, I won't lie. And people were very empathetic. But at one point I thought, okay, all right, I just need to be gritty, say thank you for your support. But it could be worse. And that helped me a lot. Okay, so let's go to the next thing I want to talk about. And it's another book. It's very important to read. I will say that, because, if we don't read, we think we invented stuff. This is Sheryl Sandberg's book. And I don't know if you know the story of what happened to Sheryl Sandberg, but she lost her husband to a heart attack suddenly. And even though, now there's always a nuance. It's not black or white. This is option B. Again, I'm not selling this, but interesting to read. It's really important to not be one way or the other. So yes, don't complain. But what she says is very important, is to acknowledge the pain, though. So you've got to acknowledge the pain. So the way I did this was, thank you for your empathy. I really appreciate it. And it has been very, very difficult, and it has been very, very painful. But I'll get through it. So you recognize, because if you don't recognize the pain, you can't move on and be gritty. So it's not like recognizing pain isn't gritty. They're not, mutually ruling each other out. So this is not about being hard on yourself, because being hard on yourself never works, because your psyche manages to squeeze itself out of some other corner. You know what I mean, Tyhson? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the second point, is don't complain, but on the other hand, recognize pain duly and cohabitate that it is painful, but I can get through this. All right. Great. So let's keep going. Acknowledge the pain. Now, I had a coach, and I was going through this terrible time. And he said to me, oh, come on, you're not in Auschwitz. And I thought, okay, you know what? He's right. That was the lesson. He's right. But on the other hand, I thought I still need to acknowledge my pain. So you got to be careful what people tell you, and you've got to think for yourselves. Even if you have a coach, you have to take responsibility of your own consciousness. And that's the lesson in that. The coach was great. He's great. But that's the piece that was missing, and that's human. So again, be gritty and think for yourself. Okay, now to the development point. and another very important idea. Okay, now we have, again, as I said, 4 building blocks that form and fuel your general grit. And I'm going to dispense this knowledge without further ado. So, are you ready, Tyhson?
I'm ready for the next one.
Very good. Okay, so the 4 blocks that I mentioned previously, but I digressed, are growth, resilience, instinct, and tenacity. Now, let's start with growth. Now, growth is your propensity to seek and consider new ideas, additional alternatives, different approaches, and fresh perspectives. So that's number 1. Number 2, resilience is how well you respond to adversity and your capacity to be strengthened and improved by the tough stuff. Now, I've come across new research lately that talks about anti-fragile. And the good news is this. The good news is that people who've been through really hard times, it actually helps them. So it's kind of like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's actual research on this called anti-fragile, and it's a new kind of discovery that should make people who've been through tough times feel better about it, because we have a different way of coping with things. So that's the good news, Tyhson. Have you heard of that? Have you heard of anti-fragile?
No, I haven't heard of anti-fragile. I've certainly heard of fragile and had that in my life, but anti-fragile, no. It's a vaccination you take?
It's kind of like a vaccination from hard times, yeah. So great, that's a good way of putting it. Okay, so 3rd one, instinct is your propensity. Now this is important. Instinct is your propensity to pursue the right goals in the best possible ways. Now I'm going to help with that in a minute. So right goals, best possible ways. Something to think about. Folks, are you pursuing the right goals in the best possible way? Because this cuts through a lot of the time wasting. Okay. And I feel like that's part of the conversation that's been missing from the whole grit conversation until now. So that's where my input comes in. So this is what it means. This is the question. How much energy, time, effort, hope, and resources have you expended pursuing the wrong stuff? Okay? Or pursuing the right stuff in the wrong ways? Now, for most people, the answer is a heck of a lot. And actually, 350 top telecom executives were asked this, and they said more than half. So I'll ask you that as a little test. Tyhson, how much energy, time, effort, hope, and resources have you expended pursuing the wrong stuff or pursuing the right stuff in the wrong ways? What would be your estimation of that?
Yeah, great question. I would use the 80-20 rule that, even if I go by the 20% of my success,
yeah,
or 100% of what I'm doing in my wheels, and probably in the wrong areas. So what is that sweet 20%? And, it's not the easiest thing in the world, because really it's not a mind exercise. It's an instinctual or an intuitive knowing. And that comes from calming down. It comes from getting your head, stop butting your head against the wall and taking a breath and being calm enough to go inward in order to be calm enough to know what that 20% is. And I would say that's the biggest barrier in my work that I do, is not recognizing what that 20% is. So I'm wasting an awful lot of time. And I think most people do.
Right. The 20 is great. That percentage, we know that. But this is a much simpler question, actually. How much of your time is wasted on stuff that's a waste of time? Energy, hope. These top telecom executives literally said 50% of my time is wasted. So I think that's a new way of looking at it, and very simple. How much of your time are you wasting? And if we really analyze this and look, we go through all our meetings, all the hours, there's a very easy way of working this out. And when you do, you're in shock. And when you do, you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop networking there. I don't really need to do this. I'm going to get help with this. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, there was a meeting yesterday that I was to attend as a board member, and I chose not to, although my wife was attending and I could sort of catch it every once in a while. That was a 6-hour meeting, and I knew that before the meeting that it would be a waste of my time. Not that I don't like the people. Yes, I'm learning to be careful about what I'm going to invest my time and energy into and not waste it in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, and simple. Because you know what? The brutal but compelling truth is that it's impossible to lead an optimal life or grow an optimal business without developing the instinct to pursue optimal goals. So optimal goals, 1, in optimal ways. 2, optimal goals, optimal ways. That's the key. No one ever does this 100% of the time because we are human beings and we need downtime and we're not machines. But even if you could, change the percentage slightly, it would probably help. Okay, so great. So we're getting to tenacity now. Tenacity is the degree and duration of relentless effort and energy you put into whatever you do. Okay, that's the tenacity part of grit, is that you figured out where you should be putting your energy and then you do it. Okay, so growth, resilience, and instinct are all essential. But tenacity propels you across the finish line. That's your motor. How many starts and stops, how many attempts, how many heartfelt efforts, over how much time does it take to break through and succeed? So yes, we do need hard work. So this is where successful people do succeed and excel, is identifying where to put their energy. And all major breakthroughs and innovations, they've all followed this formula. Any changes in history, all of that didn't just happen. Okay, and you know what? People who have grit are considered not sane, but less sane people throw in the towel. Think about that. What's your input on that?
Yeah, I think the tenacity to know, what you're supposed to be focusing on and then going for it is so powerful, because you're not spinning your wheels anymore. It's sort of the counterbalance to just putting your head down and just do without doing the preliminary work of where you want to put your energy. Right. So I agree with you. Once you know where that 20% is, or that leverage is, and then you put grit to it, or tenacity, then you are going to succeed. And so what does it take to a different way?
Okay.
That's a great question to ask yourself, because otherwise you're just going to keep hitting that ceiling over and over again.
Right. And actually, this is how I help people. First, I help them get really clear on how to get from A to B in the shortest time possible. So we're just cutting out a lot of the noise and getting a very clear picture. And then we go. Because what happens is people have all these false obstacles in their path. And we just shoot them down and say, okay, that's not actually an obstacle, but you don't even need to do that. And they go, really? I didn't need to do all this time wasting stuff? Nope, you didn't, because that wasn't the vital step towards your success. So I help people clarify at the very beginning. And they love it, because they feel guilty at first. And I said, but you never needed to do that. You never needed to do that to be successful. Oh, but my other coach said I had to do all this stuff. And I said, nope. So it's really important. Okay, a little thought here. Do you know that grittier people tend to put more time into developing what they want to do? Okay, so that means if you're going to play a musical instrument, grittier people practice more hours. You do need to put the practice in. There's no magic wand. If they're working on a project or a career, they put more time in. They're putting more time in, but the time is more valuable because they first identified what to work on. So it's not about not putting time in, because the fact of the matter is you do need to put a certain amount of time in to get good at anything. That's just a universal law. Okay, now Anders Ericsson is the guy in the world who's the expert on figuring out how experts acquire world-class skills. So that's somebody I want to know about, and I've done a lot of research on his work. And this is what he found. I'm going to read this to get it right. That there is a number of hours that it takes for anyone to be proficient. But beyond that, he's discovered this about experts and how they improve instead of hitting that plateau and never getting past it. Okay, so there's putting the hours in and then getting past. So this is what we figured out. This is the goal. This is the system. And as I said, if people want this handout, they can reach out to me. Okay, first of all, they set a stretch goal, zeroing in on one narrow aspect of their overall performance. So I'll give an example. Okay, then they strive to reach this. This means they don't just practice vaguely to practice. They're always aware of the stretch. So I'll give an example. Say you're a violinist and you are playing a very difficult piece, and there's a passage that part of the music that you're not quite getting. You will choose that part and say, okay, I'm going to perfect those 5 bars or whatever, and that's your goal, instead of just playing the piece over and over and over again. Because the likelihood of that part getting better if you're just playing the piece over and over and over again is lower than if you just practice on perfecting that. So that's the first thing. Or if you're a business, I'm going to perfect my networking skills, not just my whole business. I'm going to perfect my networking skills. And specifically, what can I perfect? Okay, let's see. I don't get out enough. So I'm going to perfect where I go out and how frequent I go out. Now, if I do this, my networking will improve because I've focused on this. Does that make sense, Tyhson?
Absolutely. It's like decide what you need to do and master it. Once you've mastered it, you can leave it alone. If you just sort of tittle with it and tinker with it, you're going to keep coming back with it and tinker some more and tinker some more. And
right. Well, it's not about leaving it because I've got more to this. Okay. So right. You're zeroing on the narrow aspect instead of overall. Instead of overall, I want to, when people say, I just want to improve my business, that's just what? Everything all at once? They're never going to. They need to, I got to improve my sales. I've got to improve my networking. I've got to improve my sales calls. You've got to narrow on one thing, and you can move it around, but you've got to focus on raising your numbers. You can't just do it all at once. Okay, so now people that have grit are always aware of the stretch. Now I'll give you another example, working out. I'm working out now. Okay. I don't love working out, but if I'm working out and just working out, that's not going to work as far as getting gritty and improving. So I say, okay, I'm doing 10 back push-ups. So every day I do more every day. So my goal is 3 more. So then I'm going to improve that. If I just say, oh, I'm just going to work out, I'm never going to up anything if I don't consciously do it. Okay, and I'm aware of it because I'm clocking it. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is they seek feedback. Now this is a big one because much of feedback, as we know, is negative. And human beings avoid pain at all costs. So greedy people, and this is the newsflash, greedy people are more interested in what they did wrong than what they did right. Because getting the feedback about how great you are makes you feel great, but it doesn't actually make you improve. Getting feedback about what could have been better is actually what makes us improve. So they seek and they have the guts to say, okay, what didn't work? And they're, brace yourself, because nobody likes being criticized or getting negative feedback. We know that, don't we, Tyhson?
Absolutely. Yeah, feedback and negative feedback can grind you to an absolute halt. But if you get attached to it, if you just take what you can and learn and then let it go, then you can move ahead really quickly. So any feedback, positive, negative, is beneficial for your growth if you treat it that way.
Right, but you're not actually letting it go. You're saying, great, thank you, and I'm going to take these points and I'm going to use those to improve. So say there's a violinist and the violinist has a teacher. If the teacher says, oh, that was wonderful overall, that violinist will not improve. He says, you know what, overall it was great, but you know what, we really have to work on this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what I'm saying is, and when you have feedback and you don't necessarily like it, you take and learn what you can from it and then let it
right.
Just do,
right.
I didn't like what I was doing.
Yeah, but you don't let it go in the sense that you're done with it because you're still going to be working on that feedback because it goes to another level. Okay, so we're building. Exactly. Okay, so that's the newsflash. So this is a huge one for people, and I'm going to repeat this because it is not what people tell you normally. They say, oh, ignore the bad feedback. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it get to you. But also you have to look at where it's coming from. Okay, that's important. Look at where it's coming from. If it's just a nasty source, ignore it. If it's somebody that's genuinely giving you feedback that you've asked for, and it's not unsolicited, mean, jealous advice, that somebody that you trust that can say, hey, here's the feedback and this is what we need to improve on. Embrace that. And it's hard because we want to avoid pain. Okay, that's the, now the third one is highly gritty people. They do it all over again. So they rinse and repeat. So they want to improve one aspect. They get the feedback. They do tweaks. And then they do it all again. And then they ask for feedback again. And then so they're getting to a higher and higher and higher and higher level. And that is how you raise your performance. That's also high performance training and raising your grit. So this is revolutionary for some people because this is counter to what they're being told. Feel good about yourself at all times. That's not the point. Okay, so then they have another stretch. So let's use the business example. I'm saying, okay, I really want to raise my skills at networking. So that means, I'm going to work on going out more to more appropriate places. So that means I'm going to analyze, where do my ideal clients hang out? I'm not just going to keep going out to all these places and not analyze. So I'm going to really do some research and raise my probabilities of getting business from my networking. So I don't just do it once. I get feedback, perhaps from my coach, perhaps from somebody else, a mentor, and say, look, this is where I'm going. These are my results. How could I do this better? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then I have another, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think the important thing that you're saying here, that for people listening, is that if you don't have a coach, you're highly recommending that people do have a coach. So it's part of the learning how to be stretched, right? Or allowing yourself to be stretched.
Well, actually, thank you for saying that. But I do think people should have a coach, but I was using that as an example. I mean, you do need mentors, coaches, and teachers, whatever it is you are doing. But the point is, you have to have somebody trustworthy, whether that's a coach or not, somebody that you trust. And I have mentors and coaches. I'm not going to ask my next door neighbor that knows nothing about business how I'm going to raise my grit with my business, obviously, because then you're just getting, bad advice. So that's very important also where you're getting your feedback from, right?
Say the last part about it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, actually, I'm not here to advocate a coach, although, of course, I believe in that. What I'm saying is that it's really important when you're getting feedback that it's from a really good source. So not your next door neighbor that knows nothing about music or painting or your business or what it is that you're being gritty with. You have to make sure it's your mentor or your coach or some authority that understands, or a violin teacher, if it's about raising your skills at violin, or whatever. But I'm not saying to get unsolicited advice from Joe Blow on the corner, because that's actually harmful. Because getting unsolicited advice is not good. And people love giving advice when they don't know anything about it. So avoid that. Yes, do get a coach if you have a business. Obviously, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and money, and you're going to get to point B with less pain. Okay, so that's the key. And then the big key is also always have another stretch goal. So don't work on 10 things at once. You could then change and say, okay, now I'm going to stretch my expertise in something else in my business. Like, I'm going to get better at my enrollment calls, but I need to have a measurable metric. So it might be, I'm going to sign more people up. So I'm going to go from, I'm going to sign more. I'm doing, let's say, 1 out of 10 people. Now I want to sign 3 out of 10. So you have to have something to go for. Okay. So I guess the point is, I have a question. This is interesting to ask you, Tyhson. How many people do you think focus on their weaknesses in order to improve them, rather than just wanting a pat on the back?
I don't know. I think I work with empaths, and I think one of the problems with them is that they think about all this way too much. And so really they get overwhelmed by trying to get it right, or are worried about getting it wrong, and they get a lot of spinning in their wheels rather than just say, okay, I know there's lots of things I need to fix or change about myself, but I feel okay with myself. I just need to get on with it. So it's really a delicate balance for some people to even feel good about themselves enough to move forward. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think what I'm asking people to do is actually to have courage. I'm not asking them to be fearless, because
Yeah.
that doesn't exist. We all have fear, and it actually saves us from being burnt to death, and looking both ways when we're crossing a street really saves our lives on a daily basis, because we have an instinct of fear. And there's no such thing as a fearless person unless they're just an anomaly. I'm saying have courage to walk through the fire and say, I am willing to look at my weaknesses and work on them in a very constructive way, not to beat myself up, but to understand that we all get better at whatever we're going to do by looking at it. Now, I have a very interesting thing to say. The author of this book, Duckworth, she actually has a very beautiful TED Talk on this. And the really interesting thing is when she approached TED, the people that run TED, to do her talk, they basically thought she was awful. They thought she was terrible. And she used this system of just fearless or courageous feedback with her family. And she kept rinsing and repeating. And they said, well, you know, Angela, that part's really boring still. And so she kept going and rinsing and repeating. And I got to say, her TED Talk is amazing. And when you think about the background of how she did her TED Talk, she didn't just turn up and was amazing. It was she used a lot of humility to use this system on herself, because they literally said, you're just awful and it's boring. And she was like, gulp, gulp, and that's a real lesson, I think, that the person that wrote the book shows us, that she uses this. And it's also, we've got to be humble to understand we're not going to be good at something automatically. Life is not such. All these really famous expert people, they have worked very hard and very smart to get where they are. And I think it's really important to unveil that and look behind, Oz's curtain and say, you know what? It's not just by magic people are good. And I'm giving you the key, folks, to being great. So, okay, so that's it. It's just really kind of just taking courage and saying, gulp, this is going to hurt, but it's going to be for my greater good, to ask somebody that you trust, someone that you trust, what could have been improved on, and then create a system of how you can measure how you're getting better at that. Okay, so a percentage or something that can be measured, has to be measured. So that's kind of it. Now, Angela Duckworth has a grit scale you can do, and I actually have printouts of this. And Dr. Stoltz, this fellow again, can you see the book properly?
Yeah, I can.
Good.
It looks.
Yeah, he's amazing, actually. He has a grit gauge. So there's certain ways of measuring this. And you can get a really good idea of where you stand now as far as your grit. So that's kind of it. I'm just looking through my notes. Yeah, that sort of covers it. I've given you the 4 pillars. I've given your people ways to actually do this. And it's pretty simple. It just takes courage and will. So yeah, and if anybody wants to have a complimentary session, I'm a business and executive coach. How are we going to, should I tell them my email address, Tyhson?
Yeah, I'm going to put it up. I'm going to put it right up. So here's who Jeanne is. She's a business and executive coach, and there's her website, www.Jeanne. Say it correctly for me.
Well, actually, it's Jeanne Omlor, and it's www.com. So it's JeanneOmlor.com. And they can just reach out to me personally. If you put Jeanne at JeanneOmlor.com, that comes straight to me and not my assistant. And I'll be glad to offer anyone that listens to this a complimentary strategy call. And we just get really clear on the way forward. So that's great. So Tyhson, what did you learn? I want to know personally, because I know you, what did you learn from this today?
I've learned that, this is going to sound a bit strange, is don't do an interview on Victoria Day when too many people are slowing down the bandwidth so that it gets a bit garbled. So that's number one. Remember when you're doing it to look at what holidays are in Canada and what holidays are in America. So I know that you have a big day coming up next weekend, which is equivalent to ours, right? That would
Right.
not be a good day.
Well, I wasn't going to, so that we're good on that one. But thank you.
So that's number one. That's a technical thing. And number two is that I really do want to apply this to my own business, and it makes me excited about the opportunity to work with you on a free session, but also to look at the possibility of having you go deeper into my business to apply these techniques so that I can then use the techniques on my own as a strategy in my business. Because I know there's certain, what I call them glass ceilings or imposed barriers that I've been bumping up against, and having somebody else provide that grid analysis to literally break through will provide a lot of energy to that's backed up to flow again. So I'm excited about those opportunities. I hope everybody in the call who has a business, it's important to say that what we're talking about from a business perspective actually apply in your self-growth and your human potential, on your own level of becoming more authentic. You use the same techniques and it work very effectively. So it's not just a business. The beauty of this is that
it's life.
That it's intertwined. It's life, yeah.
It's life.
Yeah. Apply this in your life,
Yeah, and this is, the grit thing is very small. It's a very small part of what I help people with. Really what I do is I help people make more money. I do whatever it takes to make that happen in a way that's aligned with who they are. But there's so much that goes into my coaching. But definitely the grit part is huge for me because I really relate to it. And I relate to how I used to be and how I am now and how I've gotten just more in the numbers with it. Because you do need the numbers, Tyhson. You know that, right? What I'm saying is the grit part is it's an underlying part of what I do. And I talk about it a lot because I think it really is, I think, the biggest factor to success with a lot of strategy. You can't just have grit and say, oh, it's going to happen. I help people with a lot of other things. My main thing is I help people maximize their profits in their business. And this is part of it. And also in a way that they want to work, not imposing some sort of sleazy sales kind of methods. So it's really important that people become successful in a way that is aligned with who they want to be in the world. Does that make sense?
This is to help people get from where they are to where they want to be in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yes. Yes. And making the most money possible.
Yeah, and making the most money possible.
Yes, very important. And I shamelessly say that because I think there's some sort of money taboo going on that we're all pretending we don't want to make money. We do want to make money. Let's just put it out there. I'm going to help you maximize your profits in the best, quickest possible way, in a way that's aligned with how you want to appear in the world. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's why this is called the Wellness Show on health, wealth, and enlightenment. The three are all interconnected, right? You can't have one without the other.
I agree. So a lot of it is very much mindset. But what I was saying it's really important. There's a lot of mindset. There's a lot of energy and everything in what I do. But really, people have to be more in the numbers. The mathematics of life. My dad was a mathematician, actually. The mathematics of life will help us because there's mathematics in everything. And we also have to be in our numbers and analyze those as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you need to track your success. And I don't know how it works, but anytime I focus on any metrics, they grow like crazy just by focusing on them.
Exactly. And that's actually something that I help people with. So great. So are there any questions that you had?
No, I think it was a great honor to have you on the show. It's really great that we're making the corner. This is the 201st show. So we're in the next decade of hundreds. And here we are launching from a business perspective of how to bring more money into your life, how to work less, succeed more, grow, be and wise, which is the line. Say, until next week, be healthy, wealthy, and wise. So here's some techniques to learn and apply in your life to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And what could be better than that?
Agreed. Thank you for having me, Tyhson.
Thanks for having you on the show, and we'll have you back. You've got lots to share, and thanks for showing up, and it was great talking with you.
You too. It was a pleasure, and have a blessed day, everybody. Take care.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.